Hey, Cut the Shit listeners. You can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Go check us out. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Cut the Shit, a podcast series that aims to take a closer look at the impact of the IT industry, both the good and the bad. Cut the Shit is brought to you by Plow Networks, a managed IT services company based just outside Nashville, Tennessee. I'm Bryan Link, COO here at Plow, and I'll be your host for this series. I'll ask questions, and with the help of our guests, try to dig deep on some of the key challenges we all face dealing with IT. So with that, let's cut the shit and get started. On today's episode, I'm super excited to give you the second of two conversations I've had with colleagues from our support desk. As I mentioned last time when I talked to Hannah, I asked her and my guest today to come on the podcast to help give you guys an insider's view of who works on our support desk, how they think about the work they do, and what lessons you can learn to make your internal IT efforts more effective. My guest today is my colleague, Ryan Vaniman. Ryan joined Plow almost 18 months ago and currently serves as one of our service desk analysts, where he has responsibility for providing first-line support across a range of services for our clients. Prior to joining Plow, Ryan worked in a Mac support environment, but since joining us, he has branched out and now helps our clients across a variety of technologies. During our conversation, I talked to Ryan about his journey into IT, what he learned about customer service in his previous work engagements, and how making music and IT are not as different as you might think. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Ryan Vaniman. Ryan, welcome to Cut the Shit. How are you today?
Good. Well, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks for joining, especially the end of the day. Hopefully it hadn't been too stressful on the desk today.
Yeah, not too bad. It has been a little busy. I've been looking forward to this so I can hop out of the queues for a little bit.
I get it. Well, I'm glad it could be a respite for you.
Yeah.
So we'll try to make it a little less stressful than that for sure. So before we dive into the meat of the discussion, how about we start with you? Why don't you give us an example of, a really interesting use of technology or a hack that you've seen or heard about recently? Could be at work, could be at home, your own personal experience, kind of up to you.
I guess, the most obvious one is really these days, just the use of like ChatGPT and AI in general is kind of insane. Like I came into this job with like, some experience in troubleshooting and stuff, but definitely nowhere near like a very high level. I feel like with ChatGPT, if you have if you're motivated enough, you can figure out how to do almost anything with just like a few resources. So it's pretty insane what we're seeing these days with AI.
Yeah, I think the access to knowledge, right? It just makes it that much easier to be able to query and get what you're looking for, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would assume that almost anyone in this field that you ask that question to, I would say probably 8 out of 10 people would have that same answer to. Maybe I'm wrong, but I really do think that is like by far, if you're going to say something's a hack, like ChatGPT is just unbelievable.
Yeah, I think everybody's, certainly in our industry, right? Everyone's aware of it and everyone's cognizant of how it might potentially be used, right? And be willing to go in and start playing with it, right? And looking at ways to try to leverage it. So, well, very good. Well, Ryan, I've already introduced you a little bit in the intro, but why don't you give us a little bit of background, maybe a thumbnail sketch on kind of your background, sort of how you got to this point in your young life.
Yeah, it's been kind of a long journey for me to get here. I I graduated high school, went to MTSU for a few years, and kind of had the idea that I might want to do computer science or something like that. But I had my hand in the bucket of trying to play music and do music production, business, all that kind of stuff. So I was kind of confused while I was in college as to what I wanted to do, and ended up wanting to just go on tour with my band and dropped out. So never got that computer science degree or anything like that. And from there, I worked in like warehouses and kitchens and stuff like that. Learned a lot of like really good life skills from doing that. Just how to interact with people, met a lot of great people through those times, learned how to cook really well. And
that's a plus right there.
Yeah, it's like one of my favorite things to do. So that was a really good time in my life, as difficult as it was, working those entry level jobs for a while. But then working in the restaurant industry, COVID hit, and kind of a rough industry to be in during
Yeah,
that time. So
for
I kind
sure.
of started thinking to myself, like, okay, I'm getting older. I have like a serious relationship now. We had been, talking about getting married and stuff. I was like, I might need to kind of get my act together. So during COVID, I had a friend who worked at a Mac repair shop, and I was like, if I go work there and get some experience under my belt in troubleshooting, that might help me get into the world of like IT and stuff. And then that's exactly what happened. So I started working there. I met Sam Todd, who got me the job here. He had started working here after he worked at that Mac repair shop as well, and recruited me on. And here I am. And it's the this is kind of the job I feel like I've been working towards my whole life. I feel really like grateful and satisfied to be here. I haven't felt that way about a job in the past.
Excellent, excellent. Well, that appreciate you sharing that. Like a lot of, it feels like a lot of folks in IT didn't start out there, sort of work their way here. I mean, there's some people who sort of, or a lot of stories like yours, like people that always had an interest in technology, right? Had thought about it, but maybe did something else, and then worked their way back. Either sort of on purpose or sort of accidentally, or complementary in some sort of complementary fashion, and oftentimes end up being, the just the best at it, right? And I think that additional experience, that other kind of experience, really helps for sure. Because at the end of the day, right, our job is, it's technology, but it's also, customer service. Right? We're helping people try to deal with technology. It's not just technology. You can do everything right technology, and if you're poor at relationships, you'll fail, right? And so that piece of the puzzle, I think, is sometimes hard for us in the industry, particularly if you're a really good technologist, because it can be frustrating when other people are not.
Right.
I see that a lot. So, thinking back to your first job in IT, at the Mac repair shop, I mean, what was that experience like? What was it like, kind of going from, because you'd had an interest, but it was something new, right? It was sort of a new start for you. What was that like?
Yeah, absolutely. I had never had any experience troubleshooting problems with other people. Trying to, I had done troubleshooting at home when I run into an error on my computer, but outside of that, I was, what's the right metaphor here? I was just like yeah, I was completely out of my element at first, in over my head, to say the least. But I mean, just you know, I was really determined to like learn how to be good at it. So I was always picking people's brains that worked there. Um, and there were a lot of like online training resources that I tried to utilize as much as possible. And then like the main thing is just getting your hands dirty at places like that. You just got to jump in and start fixing stuff even when you have no idea what you're doing. And that's the biggest lesson I learned, I think, is that 9 times out of 10 you're not going to know what the exact answer is, with problems in IT. Maybe not nine times out of 10, but it's a frequent thing where you're going to be like, I have no idea. But you have to just start somewhere and start figuring out what the problem isn't. Take things off the list,
Right.
and eventually you might uncover what it is. So yeah, it was a lot, and it was really busy during COVID. We were understaffed. It was kind of a nightmare job, to be completely candid, but it was also trial by fire, which was really really good for me. I think it taught me a lot, and I wouldn't be here if I hadn't done that.
Through that process, did you feel like fairly soon into the gig that you were you thinking, I think I've done the right thing, or were you thinking, oh my God, I've made a terrible mistake?
It was it was back and forth for sure. There were definitely days where I was like, man, what am I doing? This is awful. But no, yeah, ultimately at the end of the day, I always felt deep satisfaction. Like, this is gonna sound very cheesy, but I always found a very deep satisfaction just helping people and like figuring out a problem for somebody, having them leave the store with a smile on their face, and I did something for them that they weren't sure we were going to be able to do. So that
Right.
always made me feel really good. And as much as that job drove me crazy, and as much as this one can at times, it's like at the end of the day when I get to help somebody and they, say over the phone, or they look at me in the face and they say like, "Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, you're a lifesaver." That's a great feeling. I don't like. That's something I did miss from the service industry. When I didn't work in it at times. It's just
Yeah.
really nice getting to meet people that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's, the job, IT support work, it certainly has its moments of high stress, right? As you've sort of alluded to. But there can also be stretches of sort of routine work, right? That maybe could even to the point of getting boring, right? Where or routine or sort of monotonous. So, what tricks have you learned maybe from your time, at the shop and also, over your time at Plow to kind of help you stay engaged and sane, in the times of stress versus the times of sort of, a little bit more monotony maybe?
Um, I think if something starts to become too monotonous, I start to think about what are ways that I could possibly automate this. I haven't gotten like too deep into that, but I've at least been trying to like exercise my brain in the form of like I've had to do this task this many times, and if I were to figure out a way to automate it, would it save me time? How would I even start to do that? So that keeps me a little bit more engaged. If I'm just doing the same thing over and over again, at least I can go through that process, break it down into its elements, and see how which of these elements could be automated, and try to figure that out from there. There are a few things that we've kind of optimized, I think, from thinking like that on our team. And the other thing is just I'm a big like podcast person, so if I'm doing the same thing over and over again and there is no way to automate it, I just pop on a podcast, maybe about technology to keep me engaged, kind of in learning more about what's going on, and yeah, just kind of that keeps me sane for sure. I like listening to a podcast while folding laundry or cooking, doing anything monotonous.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So the flip side of that, these moments of stress, can you got any war stories? Can you share like your worst war story you've had in terms of dealing with like a really bad situation, sort of a four alarm support issue, where there was a lot, kind of a lot on the line or the person was sort of freaking out?
Um, man, like so many from
I was going to
the
say that usually means, oh, you mean from today?
yeah, no, yeah, from the Apple repair store specifically, there were a ton. Here, I would say typically, being a tier one specialist, if something's really like high level red alert, I'm gonna touch it for about 10 minutes and then I'm sending it to the next person, and we're escalating it down the line to make sure that's getting taken care of ASAP. um Man, I would really have to. I know I have some stories from Simply Mac, but I can't think of anything.
Yeah, I was going to say, did anybody like really foobar their machine where they just couldn't get into it and they had some huge presentation or like they're trying to get something done for school or, you know?
Every week. And the sad thing about working there is like we like I said, we were kind of understaffed at times, and getting parts sourced from Apple takes a while. We have to make sure that we have enough time to repair the machine. So we would quote people like 2 weeks a lot of the time on like hardware repairs, and we'd run into people like that saying, "I need this tomorrow," and it's like I just had to look them in the eye and just be like, "We can't do, like, I
Yeah, yeah,
literally cannot do
it's
that." So
impossible. Yeah.
that was most of the experiences like that, where it's working there. Someone comes in really high level. They need something done ASAP. We normally just couldn't do it. We would tell
Yeah.
them, the soonest we could have it done is maybe a few days, but no guarantees, kind of thing.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. So you think about your experience so far, I mean, what would you say are kind of like the 3 or 4 kind of must-haves for being successful at doing IT support? I mean, is that the people you work with, processes, metrics, training? What would maybe be maybe 2 or 3 that you would think that are just they're kind of must-haves that really matter if you're gonna start your own IT support business? You're gonna make sure you had these things in place. What would those be?
Um, so are you talking more kind of the things, let me tell you the things that are coming to mind for me, and you tell me if
Okay.
this is kind of the answer that you're looking for. I would say curiosity is number one. Like I was saying, when you are helping people on a help desk, or really in any form of IT, if you're helping an end user or another client or something like that, a lot of the time you're going to come across stuff that you don't know the answer to. So having a curious disposition is very important, I would say. Number two for me would be just a high level of customer service, I guess. Just knowing how to talk to people politely, not get frustrated when they're frustrated, know how to handle situations that seem if the person is on edge, knowing how to handle that. And then I'd say the number three thing is also kind of hand in hand with the customer support, but more a high level of communication. So understanding what you're trying to help that person with to a level where you can break it down into all the separate components and communicate that clearly with them so that they're not confused. And then you can also display to them how you need to be communicating about something. Because a lot of the trouble I run into on help desk is when, if I'm not super clear about what I want a user to do, then they're confused, and then they come back with a confusing question for me that's completely unrelated or something. So it's understanding the problem, knowing exactly how to tell what the user they need to do. High level of communication would be the third one. Is that kind of what you were?
That's one aspect of it. That's sort of what skills should someone have, or what do you think gives someone a good capability to be successful? I was also thinking structurally, like, so let's say you have those things and you go into an environment. What are the must-haves for helping you be successful? What could the environment provide you? So that's where, like, is that good training? Is that good processes? I mean, obviously having access to good technology to be able to do what you need to do. We're going to assume that if you're working in a help desk environment, you've got the technology you need to be able to deliver, to, find information, log tickets appropriately, track what you're up to, that kind of thing. So was it, being surrounded by the right kind of people? I was just curious about your experiences and those external factors, if you will.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So I would say number one thing is just a good infrastructure for your ticketing system, like something that makes sense for when you are managing your workflow. Like we use Manage for one of our clients that I work really closely with. And it's honestly, it's really great. It's really easy to filter things out, figure out what you're looking at. So that's a big thing for help desk. A number two thing would just be good knowledge bases for the clients that you're working with. Stuff that's really detailed and clear, easy to, it gives you all of the steps on a knowledge base article. When you need to do something, you can always reference back to that. So if you have to do it once now and then once again in 6 months, it's like it doesn't matter that much if you forgot it. There's that resource there for you to be able to reference it. That's very, very important, I've found. And then the third thing is this probably goes for any job in the world, but having good people around you, I think, that are willing to answer questions. Because going back to, I think this is the third time I'm mentioning it, but most of the time you're not going to know the answer to a question that somebody's asking you, and you'll have to go figure that out. So having good people around you that already know the answers to some of those questions, and they're not afraid or unwilling to help you with that kind of stuff, help you get trained up. Because with a lot of help desk jobs, I would think it's pretty hard to train somebody from 0 to 100%, knowing how to do every single thing in an environment. You can't do that in one, 2, 3, 4 weeks. It's not possible. So you need somebody that's there as a resource for any new people coming on, so they can show them the right way to do stuff.
Yeah, it's a learn by doing, right? And so you need other people to help you, kind of give you tips, make suggestions, help you avoid the major mistakes or how to fix stuff if you do break it, because that happens too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no question. So, um, all right, well, let's kind of transition a little bit. You talked about coming to Plow, and Sam recruited you over. What was it about Plow that attracted you kind of in the first place? And then maybe as a follow up, now that you've been with us for a while, have those initial assumptions, have those been borne out? And if so, or have they changed in terms of your perspective on the company now?
The number one thing that attracted me was I talked to Sam and he said, "Come work here. It's awesome. It's the best job I've ever had in my life." So I was like, okay,
It's a strong reference. Yeah, it's always good to hear that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But then looking deeper into it, one of the things I was really excited about is I always assumed I would start working in an IT department for a company where, you are the IT department for one specific company. I thought it was really cool that Plow is IT for several companies. There's a lot more, I think, that I felt like I could learn doing something like that because we cover such a broad ground, so many different things that we do here. I thought that was really, really attractive to be able to come in, and it seemed like you must have experts on every single aspect of the IT world. So I thought that was really, really cool. Those were definitely the main two things. And then yeah, working remotely is something that I thought was not possible, until maybe I was like way older. So the fact that there was the opportunity for that was a huge, huge plus.
Gotcha. All right. And so, kind of thinking about those things and thinking about your own experience. Um, and you don't have to go, let's not go the Sam route because his answer is straightforward, but let's think a little more broadly. But if you had a good friend who was looking for a job in IT, what would you tell them to look for? What would you try to highlight, or if you were trying to counsel them, so to speak, or give them some advice?
Okay, yeah, I would definitely I would say to look for something that is that it appears to be looking into the future rather than something that's trying to maintain something that's already existing, if that makes sense. So, kind of what I'm thinking of is the utilization of cloud services, and all the remote management that you can do now. I would look for a company that's willing to lean into that kind of stuff, because I think that's where the entire industry is headed. And that's what you need to be if you're getting into the field for the first time. That is what you need to be learning. So working somewhere that does all of that kind of stuff is really important. The other thing, and I would say this about any job, not just a technology job, but the people that you're in contact with when talking to the job, make sure they're communicative and helpful, and seem real, seem like good people. That's the most important thing I think in a workplace, is feeling supported by your community. It's something we don't have a lot of these days. Everybody working from home and everybody constantly being on social media, not meeting up in person. It's like we have to find community somewhere, and I think having that in the workplace is really important.
That's fair. So you've been with us for a bit now, so long enough to have a little bit of perspective on things. You've seen some changes, right? We're a small company that's gotten bigger since you've been around, and we've made some structural changes here and there, like lots of places. What's something that you think we've gotten better at since you started?
I would say definitely onboarding processes, and basically just the yeah onboarding of clients is a big thing, because that's something I don't think had been done like all that often before I started working here. I think we had gone through a few of those, but since I started working here, we have onboarded a few pretty big clients, and the first couple, go a little rough. And not to say that there aren't problems still when you do. It's a big task to onboard somebody. But I think we've gotten even better at it than we were when I started.
And on the flip side of that, as you think about the kind of from your perspective, where do you feel like we're still not as good as we should be? Is there anything specific that sort of jumps out that you think? I know you guys are talking about this, but we really still need to work on X or Y.
I honestly, it's gonna sound like I'm just schmoozing you, but I can't think of anything. I really don't know.
Okay, that's fair. I just didn't know because sometimes you ask people, you get it, someone will immediately jump on, oh, it's this. I know we're talking about it, but we really got to get better at that, kind of a thing. So, all right, no worries. So when you think back to the repair shop, I know you said it's kind of a nightmare in some ways, but it sounds like you learned a lot, and you guys sounds like you were quite busy. Was there anything about the way you guys operated there that you feel like, well, think of them as best practices, things that you guys were good at, that we ought to copy? Are there things that you guys did there that we do different and that you think might be better if we did them that way, or things we didn't do at all that you think we maybe ought to consider?
I don't think there's anything that we did there that we don't do here that I would say that we need to start doing or anything like that. I think that I would say that there are things that I did there that maybe not that I do in my day to day now, that I think are important. Main thing being just a heavy emphasis on customer service, being communicative with the end user or for the shop, the customer. Making sure that you're giving people an update. If not daily, then at least once every like 2 days, because it can be a little stressful when you're waiting on something to get fixed, especially a computer that's important to your work or your school or something like that, and you're just not hearing back from anybody for more than 2 days. So I always try to keep that in mind, keeping the end user in mind when it comes to communication. And yeah, just it's mainly just an emphasis on keeping checked in to all of you can have a lot of tickets open all at once, but it's really important to make sure that you go through and check in with people every couple of days. Even if you haven't heard from them, they have stuff going on in their lives. So you have to be the one to reach out. Even if you reached out 3 days ago, you haven't heard back from them, you need to pop in again and be like, hey, just wanted to check in. I know you're probably busy. Is there still something we can do to help you here? So those are things that I learned there. And I think working here, quickly realized like, oh, I'm good at this job because I already know how to do all of this stuff. That's very important.
Gotcha. All right. I want to wrap up. I got a couple final questions, and then we'll let you go. As you think about you've been with us for a bit. I know we've talked about it before, and I know you like working here. So when you think about the future, what about the future both of Plow and of your particular role or future at Plow? What about that excites you?
Just the fact that I'm still so new to this industry, and I feel like I've grown so much already is exciting. Just thinking about how much I can grow in the future, that excites me a lot. I don't know exactly what I want to do yet here. As you can tell, I'm, from the beginning of our conversation, I was a bit of a late bloomer. I didn't know what I wanted to do in high school or college, and to this day, I know I'm on the right path now, but I'm going to take my time to figure out like exactly what I love doing in this world. And right now I like doing what I'm doing. So, yeah, just seeing kind of what that blooms into is exciting to me, kind of the mystery of it. But also getting exposed to all the different things. Like I was saying too about Plow in general, one of the things I like is that we do so many different things here. I've now exposed myself to all of those things, and I get to kind of see what I think is interesting rather than being pigeonholed into, only a few facets of the IT world.
Right. More options, right? I mean, you feel like you've got a variety of options perhaps
Exactly.
to consider. Yeah.
The possibilities are very exciting. Absolutely.
Well, we've alluded, or you've alluded to it a couple of times in terms of your music career. But why don't you share for us, kind of give us that story. Tell us about your music career, both kind of how its origin, how it got started, and sort of where you are today. Because I know that you have two jobs. You work for Plow, and you also are member of a working band. So share that with us.
Yeah, I grew up always, listening to tons of music. My mom owned a dance studio and worked at a dance studio for years and years after she sold that. And so I was always around music, even as a toddler. There was always music playing. And my dad played guitar, so I always had an interest in it. And then um, kind of played around in high school with friends and stuff. Got into a few bands, which we were not very good. It was pretty bad, but we were all learning our instruments, so it was
Right,
fun.
right.
And then towards the end of high school, I um, some of my other friends met some kids from another school, and we all started playing together, and something kind of clicked with all of us. We all kind of had the same um, idea of what we wanted to do, and it just made sense. And like, strange enough, I've been playing with one of the guys from that time period up into this day. So it's been, what year is it? 2023. It's been 13 years now that we've been playing in bands together. So and we're both the primary songwriters of my band now. So we've gone through a few different iterations of, we've had to rename the band and kind of try to start fresh again a few times. And then we lived together back in 2017, and we were like, let's start like our for real band. This will be the last one that we, not that we were going to hang it up, but we were like, let's stick with this one. Let's make
Right.
one. It's just
Make this one permanent. Like this is it, right? We feel like we're ready now. Yeah.
exactly. We had been at it a long time at that point. So finally did that, started our band that we're in today, which is called Early Humans. And yeah, I mean, we started off slow, just playing local shows, but we always recorded music ourselves instead of paying to go to studios, because we're both kind of techie guys who like to get really nerdy about gear and stuff. So we spent a lot of money on getting some decent recording gear, and that's been kind of the process, is like learning to write songs and learning to produce music for the past 13 years has been the story of it. And then also learning how to play live shows, because that's a whole nother beast in itself. Just getting comfortable on stage and feeling like confident in front of 500 people can be a little bit scary.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But yeah, so we started touring back in 2017, just on and off, nothing too big. And then the pandemic hit, so we couldn't tour during that. And then I kind of was thinking like, maybe we're not going to tour anymore. Maybe it's just over. And then we kind of got a out of nowhere surprise offer that was a lot bigger than anything we had done, and luckily got to go on that. Very thankfully to you guys at Plow, you guys were willing enough to let me do that. So still obviously super thankful about that. And moving forward, we're still writing, recording music. No big plans on the horizon. It's more just like, I don't feel the pressure to do it anymore, which has made me more creative in a cool way. I don't feel like this is all I have in my life. I feel like I can just kind of relax and make art that I want to make, that is fun for me. So yeah, it's my primary love in life, aside from my fiance, obviously. But
So this I'll close with this question. Do you feel like, I mean, a lot of times people think of technology as this, this very left-brained, you know, rational, scientific sort of thought process, and obviously music and creation of music as obviously being very right-brained and creative, nonlinear, etc. I don't know if I buy that, frankly, especially given the nature of what happens in technology. Whether that's what you do in terms of support and problem solving, or coding, or coming up with trying to apply technology to solve problems in some other sort of creative capacity. Do you feel like the music process and being involved in that, do you feel like that's helped you? Do you feel like that, is that something you draw upon, or maybe even instinctively or unconsciously?
yeah, Yeah, I think in some ways I've learned things through playing music that I think are applicable in the technology world. One thing being like something I've learned in my like later 20s, early 30s is the concept of keeping things simple and not trying to overcomplicate, and that going for like communication or the arrangement of a song or something like that. I think that outlook is really important sometimes because it's easy to get bogged down with all the information that's coming at you, both at work and in music. Like I was saying, kind of how you have to break down the communication very, very simply, to end users. Have to do that in a band too. When I write a song and I want to, have it played a specific way, I have to figure out how to communicate that to the person in a way that doesn't sound like I'm telling them they're doing it wrong, but also explains very clearly
Right.
that that's what I want. So I think that's a good thing that I've learned. I could probably name a ton of things, but I would be rambling, I think, at a certain point. Creativity in general, though, problem solving, like I was saying about how we were learning music production a lot of the time that we've been in a band, there are tons of problems that come up with having to fix your audio interface or your recording software, stuff like that. And a lot of them are like super complicated issues where you have to go and adjust like clock speeds or like change your buffer sizes. And not to say that those are super complicated, but at first it seems very complicated. So learning to troubleshoot stuff like that taught me a lot about just how to Google stuff, kind of, because you're getting into very specific things where you're looking
Right.
through manuals or trying to go through forum posts and stuff. So
Yeah, and the patience to deal with that, right, it feels to me cuts across both for sure.
for sure.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, that's all I've got on the work quote unquote side. I always like to wrap up with something. I call it personal. It's not really personal, but I always like to ask, is there something you could share with others that you've read or listened to lately that you think they ought to check out? And that could be anything. And it could be the latest Early Humans release too. That'd be fair. I mean, feel free. That's right.
Gosh, man, I listen to so much, like so many podcasts. I feel like my head is so filled with that, thing nuggets I would like to share that I can't even think of one. TV, I just finished the show Barry, which was unsettling but very, very good.
I haven't watched it, but my son has, and the premise is absolutely hilarious. Although it reminds me, it's not exactly like it, but there's an old movie from the '90s called Grosse Point Blank with John Cusack, and he's an assassin who goes back to his high school reunion, and he's also in therapy. So it's a little bit like Barry, not exactly, but they're kissing cousins for sure. But it sounds hilarious for sure, but to your point, also unsettling.
Yeah, absolutely. That one's really good. And then I'm watching The Bear right now as well, and that show
So am I.
is very, very good.
It's really good. Yeah. And if you like cooking and I mean, watching people cook, and it's kind of hard not to get sort of jazzed about that for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, excellent. Well, Ryan, listen, we'll wrap there and let you get back to it. Thank you so much for joining Cut the Shit. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed getting to talk to you, and thanks for being part of our team.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, man. Take care.
You too.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, we'd appreciate it if you would become a subscriber wherever you get your podcasts. And if you could rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, that would really help us out. Or you can just go old school and tell your friends, your family, your colleagues, and hell, anybody else who you think might want to hear something like this to listen in. If you're on social media, make sure to follow us on TikTok at CutTheShitPod, all one word, where we post lots of clips from the podcast. And last but not least, you can also watch the YouTube version of the show on our YouTube channel at Plow Networks. Until next time, take care and have a great day.